The pastor called me. I asked if I could give the message. I looked at my calendar, and my calendar was free. I was available, so naturally, whenever I have an opportunity to serve the Lord. I love doing that. So this morning when we came, actually Hoko prayed for me in the car, and then she said, "Where is Pastor going today?" Because normally Pastor is not here when he asks one of us to speak. And I said, "I don't know." So I come in here and I see Pastor sitting there, and I'm going, "Oh, he's checking out the message." Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Because I'm just praying. I had to pray and ask the Lord, "Lord, what do you want me to say? This is your church. These are your people. And what do you want me to say?" And I prayed, and I captured a portion of the Bible, and that was in it. And I captured another portion of a topic, and that was in it. And so I just had to leave it up to the Lord, and this unfolded. So the title of the message is, "Are We There Yet?" How many of you saw the movie Are We There Yet? Did you like it? No, I see the head shaking. No. Um, I saw the preview, and I thought it would be a good movie to watch because I like to laugh and I like to see comedy, and this was obviously a comedy. And so we watched it, and to some degree, it was a comedy. Uh, and the title of the movie, Are We There Yet?, suggests that this was going to be some kind of journey they were going to be on. And so the journey was with this guy and this girl he was interested in, if you didn't see the movie, her two children. And so he was traveling with the two children, and I don't know if the kids were asking, "Are we there yet?" But I think he was more wondering, "Are we there yet?" Because I'm with these two children, and I'm going crazy with them. But some personal road trips that we went on when Kaleo was 3 years old. He's 50, okay, no, he's 48 right now. Okay, so when he was 3 years old, my uncle and myself and the three children boarded a Greyhound bus in California on our way to Massachusetts. It was quite an experience. I called from here, and I made our reservations from here, from Hawaii. And at that time, there were no Greyhound buses in Hawaii, so I called California and I made the arrangements. When I got to California, I was told that Kaleo had to pay because he was 3 years old, and 2 and under are free. And I said, "You're not an airline. The airlines say 2 and under are free. You're a bus service." And when I called, you said 3. And of course, they gave me a hard time, but I had to go and see the manager. And given the story that was told to me, and sharing with him all the information that I received, he allowed us to go. But he said, "Go as far as you can. If anybody else stops you," because we had stops along the way, "if anybody else stops you, then you're on your own. But I'm going to let you go on this lake." So we ended up going. We actually, when we got on our way back, we went to Georgia, and the bus driver refused to let us on because I didn't have a ticket for Kaleo. So I said, "Well, I need to talk to your manager." And he said, "Well, the manager is inside." And Uncle is like, "Just go buy the ticket already." And I'm like, "No, there's a principal that is here, and I'm going to stick to the principle. If you give me wrong information and I act on that wrong information, it's not my fault. It's your fault." And so I went in and I talked to the manager of that station. We were maybe like 5 and 10 minutes. We never spoke about the ticket. He asked me about Hawaii. And I told him all about Hawaii, and if you ever come to Hawaii, look me up, and you're welcome to stay with us. And so I boarded the bus. They were all waiting for me. And Uncle was like, "Did you buy the ticket?" I says, "No, I didn't have to." So we ended up having really a the children, although they were young, they were wonderful travelers. Because if they don't obey and they act up on the bus, we're taking a trip to the bathroom on the bus. And they know when I say, "Come on, let's go to the bathroom," they know exactly what I mean. You're going to get lickings for not obeying me. And even now, Hoku tells my two grandsons, "Just don't let Grandma tell you, let's go to the bathroom, because you're going to get lickings." Because that's what she tells me. But at any rate, we had a wonderful time. When we were stationed in Delaware, Leilani was 2 years old. We took road trips. And the kids were obviously asking, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" When we were stationed in Texas, and the kids were in 3rd, 5th, and 7th grade, we took many road trips. So basically, the kids did a lot of road tripping on the mainland, and they saw practically every state. And we made it a point to have them visit every state. The wonder of it all is that they said there is no place like Hawaii. There is no place like home. The people in Hawaii are real. They're genuine. When you call them a friend, they really are a friend. The people on the mainland, even their friends in school, they said these people are like, they have surface friendships. It's not really deep. And so it made me aware and appreciate the fact that we live in Hawaii. And it's not lucky we live Hawaii, it's thank you, Jesus, we live Hawaii. We all have destinations in life. And destinations can come in various forms. When you go to school, your destination is a degree, obviously. When you're in college, your destination is a degree, obviously. When you get married, your destination is to have a wonderful married life. That's your objective. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes we reach our destination. Sometimes we don't. I went to college, and I was one class away from getting my degree in accounting. This is after I came back from Bible college in California. I went to college here. And for some reason, I could not get that class. And so I don't have my degree in accounting, but I was one class away from getting that degree. That was a destination. We're all on a journey of one form or another. Today's journey, we're going to look at Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 9. And this journey, actually, now we all have different journeys in life. But this journey is a journey that is the same for every single person that is born on the face of this earth. Whether you were born or whether you're conceived and not born. And I say that because after I had Leilani, I actually had a miscarriage. And when I was reading the book, Heaven is for Real, and the little boy told the mommy, "Mommy, I have a sister." And mommy said, "Of course you do. She's right here." And he says, "No, I have another sister." And she said, "How do you know that?" And he said, "I saw her in heaven." And she said, "What is her name?" And she said, "You didn't give her a name." And so he didn't know the sister's name. Well, I was like, "Oh dear God, please, I'm sorry. I don't know if I had a boy or a girl, so I don't know if I should give him a boy's name or a girl's name now. But maybe Uncle will give him a name or her a name." So that's why I say every person that has ever been conceived in the womb, whether you are born or not, is on this journey. And so let's go to explore Genesis chapter 12, 1 through 9. The first two verses that you see up there. And I wasn't sure what font I should use. And so I just made it up along the way, and I always thought, okay, I don't know how I'm going to tell. The only way I'm going to tell is if it's okay up here, but it looks okay up here. So Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. It says, the Lord had said to Abram, leave your native country, your relatives, and your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. Verse 2 says, I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. God calls Abraham, and he tells him to leave your native country, leave your relatives, and leave your father's family, and go to a land that I will show you. Now, when Leilani moved to the Big Island, she actually was very resistant to that move. She didn't want to go. She didn't want to leave her family, me, and her brothers. Well, her brothers were on the mainland, but her cousins, they always grew up with family. And she didn't want, even though she was going with her husband and her children, she didn't know anybody there. We did have family there, but, we didn't mingle with them, so she didn't know family on the Big Island. And she was pretty resistant to that. And I said, Lonnie, I'm going to share with you what Grandma told me, that your husband is the king of the castle. And if the king brings home the bacon, you cook it. And so I said, your king brings home the bacon, cook it. And the only way you can cook it for him is to be with him. So where he goes, you go. And what he's involved in for his job, you're involved in with your job. And so, again, reluctantly, she ended up going. But it turned out to be a wonderful thing. We always cut the hand of God short when we think we know what's best for us on the journeys that he puts us on. When we moved to the mainland, I said that the kids resisted going. But then they enjoyed privileges that a lot of their friends here in Hawaii have never enjoyed. Like going on a plane and just going somewhere. Going on a Greyhound bus and traveling clear across the country. Going to see the Liberty Bell and Betsy Ross's house and Independence Hall and places in Massachusetts like Plymouth Rock and all these places that you only read about. And so they realized after that God took them on a journey and blessed them on this journey. And that's the way we have to approach every journey that we go on. That, is this your will, God? And if it's your will, then we know that we're going to be blessed by it. So Abram was asked to go on this journey. He didn't know where he was going. He was just told to go to a land that I will show you. And so that's what he did. So the third verse here is a verse that I'd like us to get deeper into as we go along in this message. The third verse, and I wrote it this way for purpose. Genesis 12:3 says, I will bless those who bless you. Okay, so there's two things here that God is showing Abraham. Two things here that as we read this, we need to really pay attention to and consider in our lives. And he says, I will curse those who treat you with contempt. Now, who was he talking to? Was he talking to Abraham? Obviously, he was talking to Abraham. He's talking to Abraham because he's calling Abraham out. But we're going to read, as we read throughout Scripture, we find out that Abraham wasn't the only audience that God had at this time. God was speaking to every person born on the face of this earth. That I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who treat you with contempt. And all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. Now it seems like an oxymoron to, a statement that doesn't seem to make sense. Because he says, I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. But then he ends with saying, all the families of the earth will be blessed. So how can all the families of the earth be blessed? But he says, I will curse those who curse you. Okay. God doesn't make mistakes when he writes things. So let's check this out. Okay. Verse 4, it says, so Abram departed as the Lord had instructed, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife, verse 5, he took his wife, it was spelled with an I initially. And when I was in Bible college, my teacher called her Sarai. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation, but she was the teacher and I was the student, so I took it like it was the correct pronunciation. So I'm going to call her Sarai. Okay. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all his wealth, his livestock, and all the people he had taken into his household at Haran, and headed for the land of Canaan. Abraham, if we go back into chapter 11, we find out that Abraham is a 10th generation removed from Noah. So his father was Terah. His grandfather was Nahor. Okay, so Abraham obviously come from, because we know that there was a judgment placed on one of Noah's sons. Shem was not the son that the judgment was placed on. Actually, the land of Canaan, the people of Canaan is the one that the judgment was placed on as far as Noah's son is concerned. And they actually became the father of the black race. And God did tell them that they were going to serve their brothers. And we find throughout history, that has been the case. When God speaks, we got to pay attention to what he says. Abraham was obedient, and he was faithful. And he picked up his family. We see here, he picked up his family. He was 75 years old. I'm close to that. And I'm wondering if I would like to go on a journey like that. It doesn't seem like feasible for me. I could, if I was to jump on my car and drive it, no problem, God, send me anywhere you go. You want me to go, and I'll go. But this wasn't the case. I don't know if he walked it, if he rode on a horse, if he rode on a camel, if he rode on a donkey, but at any rate, that's what happened. So the next slide we have here is a picture of Abraham's journey. So to back up a little, Abraham's father, they lived in the land of Ur. This is Ur of the Chaldeans. So they lived here. Abraham had two brothers. One was Haran, the same place that Abraham was in and left. Haran died, and so I wanted to find out, how was Lot his nephew? Was he really his nephew, or like Hawaiian style? We just call people we have along with us nephew, and call you uncle. But Lot was the son of his brother Haran, who died while they were still living in Ur of the Chaldeans. So Terah, Abraham's father, packed up his grandson, Lot, his son, Abraham, and his wife, and another brother, and Nahor, and they journeyed 300 miles to Haran. Now, I don't know if, and I didn't look that up, I don't know if they ended up calling that place Haran after his son who had passed away, or if there was really a place called Haran and that's where, they went to. But, so they were there, and this is a 300-mile journey. Okay, so they were there for a while. Terah passes away in Haran, and then God calls Abraham and tells Abraham to go on this journey to a land that I will show you. So Abraham packs up everything. He leaves Haran, and this is where he goes. So he ends up in Shechem. This is Shechem right here. He ends up in Shechem, and he stays there for a while. He builds an altar there. And Kalau, let's go to the next. Let's go to verse 6. When they arrived in Canaan, Abram traveled, that was his name prior to God changing it to Abraham. When they arrived in Canaan, Abram traveled to the land as far as Shechem. There he set up camp beside the oak of Moreh. At that time, the area was inhabited by Canaanites, obviously, because he's in the land of Canaan. Verse 7, then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I will give this land to your descendants. So he's talking, go back please. So he's talking about this land right here, and as far as he would go. And then it says here, then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I will give this land to your descendants. And Abram built an altar there and dedicated it to the Lord who had appeared to him. Going on to verse 8, it says, after that, Abram traveled south and set up camp in the hill country with Bethel to the west and Ai to the east. There he built another altar and dedicated it to the Lord, and he worshipped the Lord there. Then Abram continued traveling south by stages toward the Negev. And I'm going to say that if they traveled by stages, they traveled, stop, travel, stop, travel, stop. So going back to, so this is Abram. He stopped, this is his first stop here. Then he traveled south to the oaks of Moreh. And then he goes to the Negev. This is the Negev right here. So all that he traveled, all that he saw, God said, I'm going to give to you. And so we see that this is all the original land of Israel, because God promised Abraham that that's what he was going to do. Okay, so after reading up to verse 9, I'm going to take you on a historical journey, if you please, a historical trip. So I'm going to give you about 4,000 years of history. And bear in mind the verses we just read in Genesis chapter 12. So in the year 2400 BC, before Christ, we had the Assyrians who came up against the Jewish people. Now the Assyrians were a very fierce, horrible nation. And they were a big nation. They took no prisoners. When they went into battle with you, you died. They weren't about to encumber themselves with any prisoners. Everything that you had, all the booty, all the bounty you had, they would take, which is something they were after, besides the fact that they wanted to conquer more lands and more territory and more peoples. Now, the king at that time, Hadad, he actually called himself the Almighty God. So, what did we read? If you bless my people, I will bless you. You curse my people, you come up against them, I will curse you. So what happened to the Assyrians? If you read in history, God wiped out the Assyrian nation. Then we come up to the Egyptian Empire. Okay, and we know that they were in Egypt, the children of Israel were in Egypt for 400 years. Okay, they prayed and asked God for God to help them. And so we read also that Moses comes on the scene, and Moses appears to Pharaoh and asks Pharaoh to let my people go, let God's people go. And Pharaoh, who himself as well, now Egypt is the world superpower at this point. So Pharaoh, who has declared himself to be God, says, no, don't even ask. I'm not going to let you guys go. You're crazy. You're my slaves. You're building my empire for me. I'd be crazy to let you guys go. Of course, he didn't say all of that, but that was his approach to Moses. So we find out that God had to intervene, and we know about the 10 plagues, and we know about the Exodus through the Red Sea. Do you think it was a mistake that God brought them to the Red Sea? No, it was not a mistake. Because not only did they see the hand of God at work when the Red Sea opened up so that they could go across on dry ground, mind you. We're talking Red Sea, and they went across on dry ground. But not only that, God severely punished the Egyptian empire by doing what? Right. When the waves came down, when the waters came down, what happened? The Egyptian army was wiped out. And so was Pharaoh. And so there went the Egyptian empire. You bless my people, I will bless you. You curse my people, I will curse you. Then we come across the Babylonian Empire. Now remember, we're going through 4,000 years of history over here, and we're finding out the people that bless God's people and the people who did not bless God's people, and the results of that. Now we come across the Babylonian Empire, and we know the story. King Nebuchadnezzar, what he did was he depopulated. He didn't go after like the Assyrians and like the Egyptians, but he depopulated the nation of Israel. We know that he left some people there. He took the best of the best, and we know that Daniel was one of them. And so he took them back. And what did God do to Nebuchadnezzar? He depopulated his empire. And not only did he depopulate them, but he said that, now Babylon, the gardens of Babylon was one of the 7 wonders of the world. It was amazingly beautiful. But God, when God depopulated them, God made them a home for hyenas and jackals. And that's what it is today. So when God does something, he goes all the way and he does it. And we need to really pay attention to what he says, because it affects us. Now we come across Persia. We know that Persia came after. Now what happened with Persia? Pastor just went through that in Nehemiah. He talked about the Persian king, Artaxerxes, and Cyrus. Cyrus actually planned for the people of Israel to go back to Israel to rebuild the wall. Not only did he send them, he funded them. He funded the building of the wall. And he sent people there to actually come alongside and take care of them. So what happened to Persia? God allowed Persia to continue. Persia is Iran today. And Iran is still is right now probably thinking dummy Cyrus and dummy King Artaxerxes, because now Israel is a big problem for Iran. Actually, Israel is not. Iran is their own problem. That's what happens. When we come up against God, we become our own worst nightmare, our own worst enemy. And that's the situation Iran is in right now. And then we have the Greeks. Now the Greeks came after the Jewish people. And they tried to desensitize them to their belief in God with their philosophical ways of life. And God allowed the Greeks to continue like he did the Persians. As a matter of fact, God even used their language, because most of the New Testament is written in Greek. And so God used their language to bring forth the message, his message to the world. And then we have the Roman Empire. So what did the Romans do? At first they were trying to be nice to the Jews, because there were like lots and lots of Jews. And so they didn't want to provoke them to fight back. And so they were being nice to them and allowing them to continue with their religious beliefs and all of that. And in the end, though, what happened is, and this is the time that Jesus Christ comes on the scene, we know that. So in the end, what happens is Rome totally destroys the Jewish people by scattering them all over the face of the earth. But this was already told to them that this would happen if they reject Jesus. Now this was a big time rejecting God, when they rejected the Son that God sent. And so they were scattered throughout the face of the earth. Now, then we come across Spain. I don't know if you know that there was a Spanish Inquisition. Okay, so now I didn't pay that much attention in school when I had history, but so I had to look all of these things up again. I did like history, but I didn't pay that much attention. And so what happened with Spain is the king and queen of Spain, at this point, Spain was very much under the influence of the Pope that was set up by the Roman Empire. Now the Pope is supposedly Christian. They're a Christian group. So because they were a Christian group, the Spanish Inquisition was based on the fact that they're going to cleanse their nation of any opposition to the Pope and to their way of living. And so what they did was they went after the Jews. And that was their cleansing. Their cleansing was either, they gave the Jews two options. Either you stay here and die, or you leave the country, but when you leave, you take nothing with you. If you're wealthy, you go with the clothes on your back, and that's it. You want to save your life, you go with the clothes on your back. And so that's what happened with Spain. Now, Spain lost its power as a world power. Then it went to the British Empire. Okay, so what happened is, I don't know, now I know this from school, that Britannia rules the waves. So the British had this very totally awesome navy, and so did Spain. But because Britannia ruled the wave and their ships were bigger and better, I would say, they actually conquered the Spanish Armada. But even though they didn't really persecute Jews, the British people were very anti-Semitic. And I know we hear that a lot in the news today. If you're anti-Semitic, it means you're anti-Jew. You don't like Jews. And we see that happening all over the world today. Jewish synagogues are being burned, they're being bombed, they're being, all kinds of things are happening to the Jews today. And because they didn't bless God's people, God took their power away because Britain was the world superpower at that point. So who did God give it to? God gave it to Russia and us, America. So Russia became a very strong military power. America became a very strong economic and military power. Now, let's look at what Russia did for the Jews and how God blessed Russia. Remember now, the war, World War II with Hitler. Hitler was annihilating Jews like crazy. Millions of Jews died in the gas chambers. What was one of the superpowers that came and rescued them? It was Russia. And so because of that, there are a lot of Jews that migrated to Russia. So there are still a lot of Jews in Russia. A lot of Jews came home from Russia, but there are still a lot of Jews in Russia. So God allowed Russia to maintain its military strength. Until today, Russia is still a very militarily strong country. And that's what you hear, yeah? Russia intervened with America's election, and that's how Trump became president. But we know Trump is president because that's God's man for the hour. And that's it. That's enough said about that. And then comes America. America has always been supportive of the Jews. Let me say something about the Spanish Inquisition. You know Christopher Columbus, right? I know we learned Christopher Columbus in school, and we know who he is. Do you know what country he came from? Okay. He was a world explorer from the country of Spain. Now, during the Spanish Inquisition, Christopher Columbus, who himself was a Jew, took a lot of Jews and brought them to America. So America has a very large contingency of Jews. So unfortunately, when they came, they didn't come with God. And so they're very anti-Christian right now. The Jews in America are basically anti-Christian. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So let's talk about Israel in the last 100 years. Okay, the Ottoman Empire occupied the Jewish country, the nation of Israel. Now, since they were scattered, the Romans did away with the nation of Israel. For 1,897 years, Israel was without a country. There was not a nation of Israel. There was not a country of Israel. There was not a state of Israel. Israel just didn't exist. Jews existed all over the world, but Israel, the nation of Israel, did not exist. Now, Britain fought the Ottomans. The Ottomans are Turkish people from Turkey. So Britain fought them in that war for control over that area. And that area was given a new name. Other than Israel, they were given the name Palestine. And the reason why they were given the name Palestine is because this is a country that the Philistines belonged to. This country belonged to the Philistines. So it was called Palestine. Now, when the Britons went into war, battle with the Ottoman, they overtook the Ottoman Empire and they became the ruler of Palestine. Okay, so we go back to World War I. This is where this battle took place. And then we come up to World War II. World War II is where the Jews are annihilated by the Germans. In World War II, World War I, we hear of a Russian Jew by the name of Chaim Weizmann. Chaim Weizmann was a scientist. He was a chemist. And so during this war, Britain was the world ruler at that time. The British people were losing the war. And the reason is because their weaponry was not sufficient enough for them to win the war. So here comes this Jew, lives in Russia, and then Winston Churchill finds out that he lives in Russia. So he contacts him and asks him to come to I'm going somewhere with this. So asks him to come to Britain, to England. So he actually moves to England. And so they contract him to create this acetone. Now the acetone is a very, very vital and necessary ingredient in gunpowder and in the surfaces of their aircraft. And without that, there's a possibility that they will lose every war that they enter. So they contract his services. He comes over and he very willingly works with Winston Churchill and Lord Balfour. So if you listen to the news, I know that you are aware that Israel has just celebrated their 100th year of the Balfour Declaration. Anybody know that? No? Okay. So Israel in 2017, just celebrated the 100 years of the Balfour Declaration. Now, what is the Balfour Declaration? The Balfour Declaration was written by Lord Balfour. So he sits down with Chaim Weizmann and he says, you know what? You've helped us win our battles. You've helped us win the war. So there is something that our country would like to do for you and for your people. What would you suggest that we do? And he said, give us land that we can claim once again. So Lord Balfour, wanting to appease him, says, okay, how about we give you the northern part of Africa? And he goes, excuse me, I'm a Jew. And he says, would you like it if I told you, how about if the tables were turned and I said to you, can I give you Paris in exchange for London? What would your answer be? He said, of course not. London is my home. He said, my point exactly. Israel is the home of the Jews. And if you're going to give us anything, give us our land back. And so now You just heard me say that the British conquered the Ottoman Empire, and now they're in control of Palestine. It is Israel, but it's not called Israel, it's called Palestine. So Lord Balfour thinks about it, and he goes to Churchill, and they discuss it. He goes to the House of Commons, the House of Lords, that's their lawmaking body, and he makes this proposal that England gives to the Jewish people their land back. It's opposed. They don't like that idea. But who's in charge? Winston Churchill is in charge. Who's in charge? Lord Balfour is in charge. He's the Secretary of State. And so he writes up this declaration giving the Jews back their land. But now it is still called Palestine. It is not called Israel. So this is the 1917 Balfour Declaration. Now, even though Israel or the Jews occupy Palestine, it is still not called Israel. So they go on a number of years. Now, in 1948, the British was set to relinquish their control or give up their control of Palestine. So in 1945, Israel appeals to America. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is the president. So when they appeal to President Roosevelt is like, I don't think we want to do that. I don't think America wants to do that. Because when you look at the nation of Palestine, you're talking like 40,000 Jews that live there right now. And you're talking like 2 million Arabs that live there. So who am I going to side for? Am I going to side for a little nation? If I ever need anything from the Middle East, am I going to get it from a small little nation? I'd rather go to a bigger nation. So that was their way of thinking. So what happens? In April of 1945, President Roosevelt dies in office. So who takes over? Harry Truman. So President Truman takes over. Let me continue with this. President Truman was a Christian from his youth. President Truman responded to the Jews with this verse, Deuteronomy 1:8. Behold, it's not up on PowerPoint. Deuteronomy 1:8. Behold, I have set the land before you. This is President Truman saying this. Go in and possess the land which the Lord share unto your fathers, Abraham, Genesis 12, Isaac his son, and Jacob his grandson, whose name was later changed to Israel, to give unto them and to their seed after them. What did he do? He went directly to the Bible to make his decision. Now, against everyone in his cabinet, against everyone who had any power at all in Washington, D.C., he actually reinstated the Jews to their land. It was at this point in 1948 that Israel was once again recognized as a country, and they were given the name of their country back, Israel. So in 1948, 1917 it started, 1948 it was established. Now we go on to page 11. Okay. Okay. So now we go to the 6-Day War. Now, let me share something with you. You're seeing up there that 1917 was the Balfour Declaration. That was a year of Jubilee. You know what is a year of Jubilee? Okay. The year of Jubilee is every 50 years. That was instituted by God. Now, in this year of Jubilee, whatever was yours, whatever was your possession in the past that you lost for whatever reason, you will regain it. So in this year of Jubilee, 1917, Israel lost their land. They were given back their land by Lord Balfour. Fast forward 1948, it was reestablished through President Truman. Fast forward 50 years, 1966 to 1967, we see there was a 6-day war. Now, in this 6-day war, can you go to the next slide? In this 6-day war, here is Israel, little old Israel, right here, just right up to this point, and right down there. You see, they had taken, the Palestinians actually occupied the Negev. That's where Abraham went initially, right? And that was given to him. But now, the Palestinians occupy this area right here, but they're not going to rest until they occupy all of Israel, because they said Palestine is theirs. So, in the 6-day war, this is what took place. See, this is Egypt. Egypt, this is Syria. Syria and Egypt came together and they went after Israel, this little old tiny itty bitty country right here. They went after Israel to wipe Israel off the face of the map. Okay. Not only did they get involved, but other countries got involved too. Okay. I don't know what happened to my printer. I would have printed this up so I don't have to do this when my printer wasn't working. So, in this 6-day war, here we have Israel operating alone. Then we have Egypt, we have Syria, we have all of Jordan right here, we have Iraq, we have Saudi Arabia, we have Tunisia, Algeria down here, Morocco, Iran. See, all of them against one itty bitty little country. All of these people came after Israel in the 6-day war in 1966, 1967. Okay, let me give you some statistics. Israel's troops numbered 415,000. All the troops combined from all of these countries numbered 1,067,000. The tanks Israel had was 1,700. The tanks they had was almost 4,000. The artillery units they had was 945. Was almost 2,000 for all the other countries. They were totally outnumbered. They were totally out-weaponed, if you please. But it took them only 6 days to win the war. At the end of the 6 days, Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt, said, "We didn't fight man. We fought God." Numerous stories, if you want to look it up on the internet, there's numerous stories of this one Israeli soldier who was his, he was separated from his unit, so he acted alone. He was alone. He had a rifle, and he saw a tank coming towards him with a not a brigade, but I don't know, platoon, if you please. I don't know these military terms, of about 100 men with the tank. And he said, "That's it. I'm done for. I'm gonna die." And then he saw them putting, the men who were walking, put their weapons down. And he was thinking, what's going on? You know, they got me. I'm by myself. They got me. I'm their prisoner. But they put their weapons down and they put their hands up. And the tank, who could have fired on him, didn't. And so instead, the guys in the tank came out and stood with the guys that were on the ground. So he, being very curious, he asked them, "What are you doing?" And they said, "We surrender." And he asked them, "Why are you surrendering?" He said, there's thousands of drawn soldiers behind you with wings, and we will not fight them. And there's stories like this galore of in the 6-Day War where God intervened. What was his plan? His plan was to bring the nation of Israel back to their homeland. And he was going to fight their war. He said that. "I will hurt them who try to hurt you." And he said that. So with all of their weaponry, with all of their soldiers, Israel won the war. 1966, 1967. Fast forward 50 years later to 2017. What happens? In the 6-Day War, see, Israel had their country, but they didn't have their city, their holy city, Jerusalem. It still belonged to the Palestinians. In the 6-Day War, they regained control of Jerusalem. They got Jerusalem back. Fast forward from 67 to 2017. President Trump declares Jerusalem the capital city of Israel. The year of Jubilee. The year of Jubilee, they regained. In the 6-Day War, Israel, can I go back to the map, please? In the 6-Day War, Israel regained, this is the Golan Heights right here. They didn't have, all Israel had was this little area right here. That's all they had prior to the 6-Day War. In the 6-Day War, they took control of the Gaza Strip, which is this. They took control of the Golan Heights, which is this, right, that borders Syria and Lebanon and Jordan. They gave the Gaza Strip back to the Palestinians in the sake of promoting peace. Did the Palestinians accept it? No. They're not going to be satisfied until they take all of Israel. That's what they want. They don't want a shared occupation. They want to take all of Israel. Now, if you keep up with the news, and I know Pastor said he watches the news, so if you keep up with the news, President Trump reinstated the Golan Heights back to Israel. It's a very controversial matter. Why? Because in the Golan Heights, right here, is lots of oil, lots of gold. It's prime territory. Syria doesn't like it. Jordan doesn't like, nobody likes it. Because right now, again, if you keep up with the news, President Trump is putting the squeeze to Iran because Iran is acting up with us because they think that they could get away with it with President Obama. I hope none of you voted now. I'm just joking. Okay. But do you know when they talk about the Iranian deal, there was never a deal. There was never a contractual agreement, arrangement between America and Iran. President Obama was just giving Iran everything that they wanted. There was never a signed agreement. So the fact that President Trump is holding fast to the fact that there is no agreement, people are getting crazy. Everybody's getting crazy. So the year of Jubilee, 1917, year of Jubilee, 1967, year of Jubilee, 2017. So, Israel today, page 13. Israel today, Isaiah 11 to 12. In that day the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to bring back the remnant of his people, those who remain in Assyria and northern Egypt, in southern Egypt, Ethiopia and Elam, in Babylonia, Hamath, and all the distant coastlands. You heard me say in 1917, there were only 40,000 Jews in Palestine. Today, there's over 7 million Jews in the nation of Israel. Now, Palestine was, on that map, you saw the map. Palestine included all of the Negev, it's okay, all of the Negev desert and Israel. And 40,000 Jews occupied that whole area. Today, there's over 7 million Jews in that tiny little itty-bitty space. And they are thriving. They're coming back in droves, and they're still coming back. They're coming back from, let's read where they're coming back from. Isaiah 11:12. And he will raise a flag among the nations. Whose flag? The flag of Israel. There was never a flag of Israel flying for 2,000 years. He will raise a flag among the nations to let everybody know Israel is here and Israel will remain here. And you will not do anything about it. You can try, but our God is going to fight for us. Our God is going to fight our battle. And shall assemble the outcasts of Israel. Who's the outcasts? The ones that roam scattered throughout the face of the world. And gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Now people say, well, I think that happened when they went back from Babylon. But if you read carefully, Babylon is only one little country that they went back to Israel from. God is saying here, he is going to gather them from the four corners of the world. And they're going to come back. So this is the coming back of the Jews. Now, timetable, are we there yet? What is there? If you saw the picture, the there is when Jesus Christ comes back for his church. Are we there yet? We're very close to it. Very, very close to it. In Isaiah 27:6, God says, he will cause them that come of Jacob to take root. Israel shall blossom and bud and fill the face of the world with fruit. In 1869, Mark Twain took a trip to Israel. And when he saw the land of Israel, he was like totally blown away because it was desert. Desert as far as the eye could see. It was dry, hot, nothing grew there, rocks. And he said, the only thing you can grow there is rocks. Because there was no greenery there, nothing. He was very graphic in his description. And the Jews didn't like it, of course, the way he was describing it. But again, that place didn't belong, it wasn't Israel at that time. And he says, this is a place where nothing can grow and where nothing will grow. Now, you saw the size of Israel compared to just the Middle Eastern countries there. Now, just think what size it is compared to the whole world. How prophetic that God would say that Israel shall blossom and bud and fill the face of the world with fruit. Do you know, as tiny as Israel is, that they're the fourth largest exporter of fruit and vegetables to the world? As tiny a country as they are, they're the fourth largest exporter of fruit and vegetables to the world. Did God say that? He did. Did he fulfill his promise? He did. In Zechariah 12:2, it says, I behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. What does that mean? Jerusalem is making the world tremble. And when they come up against Jerusalem, they're going to tremble even more. The same way all of those countries trembled when they came up against Israel in the 6-day war. Is God fighting Israel's battle? Yes, he is. Why? Because they belong to him. What does that mean for us? Zechariah 12:3, it says, and in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. That day is coming. That day is coming. Can you go to the next, to 18? Thank you. Now, if you read in Ezekiel 38, I don't have it on PowerPoint, I don't have it in my message, but if you read Ezekiel 38, Ezekiel 38 says that Turkey, Russia, this is Russia, and Iran will form a coalition and come up against the little itty-bitty nation of Israel. Why? Because they got gold, they got oil, they got food, something everybody needs. And they want to come after Israel and wipe them off the face of the earth. Saudi Arabia, in Ezekiel 38, will actually be an ally of Israel. Why? Because Saudi Arabia is smart. God gave them some brains. They know that if you got the oil, brother, I like to be your friend. I don't want to be your enemy. If you got the gold, I want to be your friend. I don't want to be your enemy. So Saudi Arabia, according to Ezekiel 38, is going to align with Israel. Has that coalition been solidified today? The coalition of Syria, Turkey, and the Soviet Union? If you're listening to the news, yes, it has. What Ezekiel 38 says is going to happen has happened. They've already formed a coalition to come up against Israel. We are very, very close, very, very close to the end times. We are living in a day and age where we need to take our relationship with God very, very seriously. It is, let's look at Revelation chapter 1, verse 1a and 3. The revelation of Jesus Christ, verse 1, verse 3. Blessed is he that reads, and they that hear the words of this prophecy. what did we just go through? We went through a lot of prophetic things. Blessed who hear the words of this prophecy and keep those things which are written therein. Wherein? The Bible in. For the time is at hand. Do you think when John wrote this, he felt that Jesus was going to come tomorrow? Yeah, I'm sure he did. But did these prophecies come to pass? No, it didn't. It is happening right before our very eyes right now. So we're living right now, I'd like to say, on borrowed time. Because God is so gracious, He is so merciful. He is taking His time because He wants us to go to people and tell them about Him so that they can be ushered into the kingdom of God. He doesn't want people to go to hell. So we're living on borrowed time right now. I asked Shans if she would sing Days of Elijah prior to the message and right after the message. And I went to Savers with Hoku, and sometimes, when I feel like I cry, I don't. I just tell Hoku, let's go someplace. Okay, Mommy. Of course, she's willing to do that. So we go places. So we went to Savers, and I bought this book called Hymns of Praise. And in this book, it has a bunch of different hymns from the hymnal, as well as the stories of the people who wrote them and what their stories were. And remember I said a short while back that when people write songs, there's a reason and a method and a message in it. And it was like, I wasn't crying because Uncle was gone. I was crying because these stories were touching me like big time. They were like, wow, wow. And so when you sing a song, try to feel the heart of the songwriter and the message that the song is saying to you. And in this song, Days of Elijah, in 1 Kings 18:21, we read about Elijah coming up against the Baal prophets. And okay, so now Elijah is saying, your God is false, my God is real. And the prophets of Baal are saying, no, our God is the real God. And so Elijah says, okay, let's do this. You put your offering, you don't light a fire, and if your God can burn it, then your God is God. And let me do the same, but I'll let you go first. So they did. And Elijah, mocking them, of course, said, oh, how about you yell louder? Because apparently your God is sleeping, or he went on vacation or something. What do? They yell louder. And so he said, well, how about if you do something more drastic so your God can hear you? And so what do? They start cutting themselves up and yell even louder. Nothing happens. And then Elijah says this, 1 Kings 18:21. And Elijah came near to all the people and said, how long will you go limping between two different opinions? In other words, don't have one foot in the world and one foot in the kingdom of God. You go all in or you go all out. Elijah continues by saying, if the Lord is God, then follow him. If Baal or Beelzebub, then follow him. So these are the days of Elijah. We need to hear what Elijah was saying in those days. We need to hear the words of this song. These are the days of Elijah. these are the days of Moses. We come down to the second verse. It says, these are the days of Ezekiel, the dry bones becoming as flesh. Do you know what that means? The Jews are coming back to Israel. They're the dry bones. You know what is the dry bones? A lot of the Jews that are coming back they still don't agree with Jesus Christ being the Son of God. But a lot of Jews are now becoming Christians. God is putting flesh back on their dry bones. Israel is coming back to life. In Luke 12:24, in Luke 21:24, Jesus says, I will awaken my people. I will bring them back to Jerusalem. Because it was under Gentile rule, but the age of Gentile has come to a close. So when the Jews came back to Israel, when Jerusalem went back into the control of the Jewish people, Luke 21:24 says, the age of the Gentile has come to a close. The age of the Gentile happened when the Jews rejected Jesus. The Jews are coming back to Jesus in droves. Today is the day of salvation. Don't fool around with God. Don't play church like Pastor says. Our relationship with God is serious, and it needs to be taken seriously. That's it.